Greetings, all warriors of light and future warriors of darkness, and welcome back to another video. Now, the Ascians. We know them, or at least we know of them. We've had a few battles with them over the series, but what do we really know of their agenda, and just how many of them are there? I mean, it feels like we've been battling with them for some time now, though it's been a long time since we did see an actual fight with the Bringers of Chaos. And we are still no closer to figuring out just what their endgame is. Especially since in Stormblood they seem to have taken a slight step back in favor of the Empire, but will soon be stepping forward to continue their crusade in Shadowbringers. At least we hope so. Anyway, I thought that this was a good chance to really look over what we know of the Ascians so far and see if we can figure out more on the state of the Ascians, and just what their deal is. Sadly, we know precious little about these guys, but I guess the best way to describe them is a cult of gothic ghosts who are the ones who taught the beast tribes of Eorzea how to summon the primals. And so basically, the reason that primals are being summoned and that we have such a hard time is because of these guys. Legends state that Ascians arrive in times of need to lead those in darkness to the light of the primals. But in truth, their hidden agenda is all about resurrecting their god Zodiark, who we don't know much else about. So we see these guys as usually masked men wearing black robes, or in some cases as skeletal, zombious leeches, but it is implied that these forms are just crude illusions or something by those who perceive them, and their true forms are unknown. Now, the word Ascian is actually a Latin word from ancient Greek, which means without shadow, which makes sense because it also has been stated that the Ascians don't have shadows despite the fact they use the power of darkness. Now, there is a sort of hierarchy within the Ascians themselves, including those who wear certain types of masks. Those who wear the black masks are considered merely the servants, and they aren't as powerful, at least in compared to the other type of Ascian, the red mask. Now, those with the red masks are known as the overlords, and they're basically the ones in charge of this cult here. And apparently they're also named after the Scions of Light that are mentioned in Final Fantasy XII. So judging from that, we have a very basic idea of their names, at the very least, and we know that we can focus our efforts onto fighting these guys. Also, it's been stated that when an Ascian dies, its soul ends up in the ethereal rift between Hydaelyn and the Void, where they reconstitute and later acquire a new host body. Ascian overlords can possess other living beings and return to the rift, shaping their bodies to reflect their ideal selves. The process is a little bit more restricted than the lesser Ascians who use the bodies of the deceased and cannot return to the rift if slain. So if you want to put it simply, the Ascians are mostly eternal, and they're able to possess the bodies of both the living and the dead like they're trying on a coat or something. And when things start to get hairy, all they have to do is drop the body like it's hot and then retreat to the ethereal rift, where they can sulk and recover before finding a new host to possess. While the Black Mass Ascians, even though they do have similar powers to their masters, they're just not as powerful, so they can still die if their host body dies. Having existed for eons, though, the Ascians have long influenced the history of Hydaelyn by sowing discord and teaching people the means to summon the primals, which are embodiments of a desire. What they are seemingly trying to do is cause a series of events that will be able to restore the world, which had been broken up into 13 different shards very near the beginning of time, and return them to just one world where they hope they'll be able to revive their god called Zodiark. Hence is why they're causing so much trouble in the world today. They're trying to bring about the apocalypse and hastening their master's return. It can be led to believe that the Ascians are the ones responsible for causing the past calamities, or at the least they're the ones who set things into motion that eventually led up to the calamities. And this is also including today, where they apparently also founded the Empire, which is one of the biggest threats that we're currently facing in the world of Hydaelyn. So let's just look back real quick on the part that the Ascians have played up in 14 so far. Most probably don't remember this, but way back in the 1.0 series, we met a mysterious man called Travanchi, who has no shadow, and stole a certain key from Y'shtola before he turned into shadows later on. Though I can't say for sure if he was an overlord or merely a servant since we haven't seen him then, I think it's safe to say that he was at least on the Ascian side. We later find out that the key he stole was actually a magic horn that he gave to Midi, who placed the horn into a primal's core after promising her that the ritual would cause her deepest desires to come true, which basically set up the entire storyline for the summoning of Alexander. Other than that, we only saw flashes of the Ascians for the rest of 1.0. At one point, we find Lahabrea watching Bahamut unleashing his devastation upon the land when Dalamud fell, and it would be a long time later before we find out that not only were they the ones who taught the secrets of sealing the primals, they were the ones who tricked Agriva and Tiamat into summoning Bahamut after he was originally slain by the Allegons. Yeah, so it really does feel like we can trace just about everything bad or tragic that happened in the long history of Eorzea back to the Ascians, who don't seem to care which side they support so long as chaos is unleashed. Now, it really doesn't matter which city that you start off in Eorzea, because the Ascians are seen causing trouble all over, and one of the first battles that you actually take part in is against the servants of the Ascians. After the calamity, the Ascians started coming out of hiding, and they begin influencing chaos once again, including local criminal groups, the beast tribes, and even Garleans in the form of Gaius van Belsar. At this point in time, knowledge of the Ascians seems to be pretty scarce though, for any sightings of them are referred to as simply masked mages, such as how they tried to spur some of the younger members of Alamigo into summoning the god Ralgar to fight the Empire, to influencing strange murders happening at Hawk Manor, and even making a deal with a man named Tristan Nightflicker in the Summoner questline on knowledge of primals. All in all, these guys are experts in taking just about any solution and turning it on its head for their own purposes. But it's not until Lahabrea possesses Thancred, possibly being the one who betrayed the Scion's headquarters to the Garleans in the first place, does this really spell out for us that these guys are really a powerful, dangerous force to be reckoned with. Now, they were also the masterminds behind restoring the Ultima weapon, which was used by Gaius. But thanks to the Warrior of Light, not only was the Ultima weapon destroyed and Gaius defeated, but Lahabrea was purged from Thancred's body and saved at the last possible moment. At the end of the original storyline for 2.0, we find out that there are many other Ascians, and we even got some names for some of them in the forts of Pashtero, Igayorm, and Nabrialis, who continue to long for the day to bring back their god. Moving on, we do see more influences of the Ascians from that moment on, such as when Elidibus actually meets with Menphilia in the Wakened Sands, and he even attacked her before luring the Warrior of Light away to speak with them in person. They seem more interested in the Warrior of Light and watching their progress, even mentioning at one point that Hydaelyn grows weaker, the stronger that the Warrior of Light grows. To combat the ever-growing threat, the Scions bring Moonbrita not only to help in reaching Iceheart before she summons Shiva, but also to get her insight in how to destroy an Ascian soul. It turns out that it doesn't matter how many times that you attack the physical bodies that they're using, because they're just empty shells and can be just thrown away. It's kind of like if you're attacking somebody and you only end up beating the crap out of a thick coat they're wearing. All they have to do is take it off and run to safety. So that's the problem. It's not the body they need to target, but rather the soul. And that's when they find out that the key is to somehow trap an Ascian soul in a place long enough to gather an ungodly amount of ether to form a magic blade to slay them, which seems to do the trick. Moving on to Heavensward, we find out that the Ascians are using the Dragon Song War to their advantage to tempt the Archbishop to summon a primal to put an end to Nidhogg once and for all. Now, this plan seems to work at first, at least until the Ascians, Lahabrea, and Igayorm underestimate the Archbishop, who uses the power of one of the Eyes of Nidhogg to become King Thordan, who then turns against them. With the two having already battled against the Warrior of Light and were beaten, even using some strange power that we don't know how, but apparently the Echo caused them to combine themselves into a monster called the Ascian Prime. A note to self, anything strange that happens in Eorzea, you can usually blame it on the Echo. No one knows how it works, but with every expansion it kind of feels like it magically gains a new ability that we didn't know before, and we have yet to fully understand or tap into, but that's not important here. Anyway, moving on, we do see the Ascians again, but only in small amounts, because now that they know that we know how to destroy an Ascian soul, they are much more careful, and they don't want to reveal themselves nearly as much, such as how they try to bring Urianger to their way of thinking, and even bringing the Warriors of Darkness into the scene and encouraging them to cause trouble in Eorzea by tormenting the beast tribes. Moving on to Stormblood, we find the Ascian activity drops significantly as we focus our efforts on the Empire. I mean, we don't even see the Ascians until the end, when we find out that not only is Elidibus possessing the body of the Crown Prince, but that Solus is alive, and that the Empire was not only founded by the Ascians, they are responsible for seemingly everything bad that's going on right now. Though we still don't know just yet what Solus is up to, Elidibus seems confident that he is now strong enough to beat the Warrior of Light with his powers combined with Xenos' powerful body, which at first it looks like he has good reason to think that way. I mean, he took on Hien, Lys, and Yugiri all at once, and he still ended up defeating them as easily as if he was swatting a fly. But when it comes to fighting the Warrior of Light, they just can't keep a good warrior down. In the end, he was forced to retreat back to Garlemald, where word was already beginning to spread that a demon is masquerading as the prince, which can only lead to further infighting later on. Not only that, we run into an old friend in the form of Gaius, who has taken up the new name of the Shadow Hunter, and is making it his duty now to hunt down the Ascians and collecting their mass to avenge his fallen allies. So it seems that the Ascians picked out the wrong person to try and make a pawn out of. So yeah, that is the story of the Ascians so far in the story. It has been stated that while we don't know much else about the Ascians at this point, we will be learning the truth about them in the upcoming expansion of Shadowbringers. But where does that leave us right now? Just what is the state of the Ascians? Well, it was stated by Nabrialis that not all the Ascians come from the source worlds of Hydaelyn. Some of them have come from the other shards. So with all the other shards out there, with the additions of Elidibus and the mysterious Elmix-Selk, I am willing to bet that there are at least 14 Ascians in all. I am willing to bet that there are at least 14 Ascian overlords in all, though there may be more that we don't know of just yet. But we can start here with 14. So here we are, at the end of Stormblood. This is a rundown of the state of the Ascians that we know of so far. Thanks to Gaius, we know that there are 3 overlords from the source worlds, the 3 head honchos, the strongest of all the overlords. The first would be the white-robed Elidibus, who not only is the emissary of Zodiark, he seems to be kind of the minder of the other Ascians. And I mean by that, by the way, is that he's the one who's trying to maintain some form of balance with everyone. Make no mistake, he's clearly on Zodiark's side, but while many of the others seem more focused on hurrying the resurrection of their master and earning their favor, and not caring about what gets destroyed in the process, Elidibus seems to be more patient than the others, and he's willing to wait however long it takes because he still wants there to be a world left for Zodiark to rule over even after he's resurrected. Then there's Heavensward, who is basically the cause for the entire 2.0 storyline, but whom we already know is dead, having been killed by the Archbishop way back in the 3.0 series, so we don't need to worry about him anymore. And finally, there is this mysterious Elmix-Selk, and yeah, that's all that we know about the guy. Don't know anything about him, never seen him on the screen before, just his name. And it was just in passing. However, many people seem to believe that Elmix-Selk is actually Solus, who was the one who founded the Empire. We don't really know that for sure just yet. I mean, even Elidibus refers to Solus by the name of Solus, not Elmix-Selk. But just for the sake of it, I say that the two are going to be one and the same for the time being until we know more. But either way, even if he is or isn't, we can at least assume that he is still alive and will be a big threat later on, especially with how mysterious they're being about his character. Moving on to the other Ascians that we know about already, these are the other Ascians from the other shards. Not as powerful as the Source Overlords, but still a formidable threat. First off, we have Mitron, who seems to be the Overlord of the first shard. Now, his status right now is questionable. We might be learning more about his story when we arrive to the first shard in Shadowbringers, but for right now I think it may be too early to decide if he's dead or not. We do know that he failed to bring an end to the first shard because he was defeated by Albert and the other Warriors of Darkness. We don't know if he was merely cast out like how Heavensward was from Thancred, or if he was permanently destroyed. So until we know more, I say that we consider him to be missing in action for the time being. For these next Ascians, we have Pashtaret, Hamaret, Ultima, and Duralathon, whom we can only guess are from some of the other shards, somewhere between 2 to 11. Not sure which ones yet, but it's safe to assume that they were all still alive and will possibly pose impossible threats in the future. Next up is another mystery character in the form of Emerald, another Ascian from another shard. Yet thanks to the Eurekan questline, we know that he discovered that the primal Eureka was sealed away in the Isle of Val. When Emeroth discovered Eureka, Kryle's grandfather Galof knew the kind of danger that the world would be in if Emeroth freed the primal, and so he took drastic measures to destroy both the Ascian and the primal. So, he teleported all of the Isle into the Lifestream, hoping that it would be enough to destroy them both. Now, as we know, Eureka was able to transport itself and the Isle out of the Lifestream eventually, but not before it killed everyone else there. And while I would like to say it's dead, I think it might also be a little bit too early to say that he really is gone, because it's certainly not impossible that he could have escaped the Lifestream at the last moment, but we have to wait and see. We also have the Ascian we mentioned before, Travachi, whom we know nothing else about, not even if he is an overlord or not. I would say that he's not one of the overlords, since his name isn't one of the names from the Scions of Light, but I am thinking that we don't need to worry about him since he did return to the shadows and there's been no word of him since. Next we have two others in the form of Lagrith and Fan Daniel, other overlords from some of the other shards. Again, we know next to nothing about them, but from the masks that we've seen them wear, as well as the ones on Gaius' belt, I think it would seem that they were also defeated by the Shadow Hunter somewhere between the end of 2.0 and before the patch of 4.4. This is just a speculation, but there is a good chance that these two are dead as well. I mean, Gaius is not the type to leave a job undone. Moving on next to Nabriales, who we know is the overlord for the 12th shard, and may have also been the one responsible for bringing about the end to the 12th shard as well. Now, he is one that we know for sure that we don't need to worry about anymore, having met his end by the Warrior of Light at the Waking Sands when he tried to steal Stupsamati. Thanks to Moonbrita, we managed to not only trap him in the aura sites, but she sacrificed her own life to give us the ether we needed to put an end to him once and for all. So, Nabriales is dead and gone, and as Elidibus had said before, it was through his own doing. And finally, we have Eorzea, who we met in Heavensward as she observed our victory over Ravana. It has been stated that she was the overlord of the 13th shard, but seemed to have failed in that mission for some reason. Perhaps accidentally turning the 13th shard into the void instead of destroying everything and returning it to the Lifestream may be considered a failure in the Ascian's eyes, but we do know that she was assigned to help Lahabrea with his goals in Ishgard as punishment for that. Now, she is also another one that we don't need to worry about either, for she was killed by the Warrior of Light back in the research facility back in Heavensward, shortly before Lahabrea was also defeated. And yeah, so that seems to be the state of the Ascians that we know of so far. So out of the possible 14, we know that 3 of them are dead and gone for sure, while 4 others are questionable since we can't confirm or deny if they survived yet. I think it's safe to say that there are at least 7 more Ascians left, assuming that there are indeed 14 overlords. Well, I do think that at least 2 others, personally, I do think that we can count 2 others as being confirmed dead for us based on the 2 masks that guy. So yeah, that does seem to be the state of the Ascians that we know of so far. So out of these possible 14, we know that 3 of them at least are dead for sure, while 4 others, well, their existence is questionable since we can't confirm or deny if they survived yet. But I do think it's safe to say that we have at least 7 more Ascians left, assuming that there are 14. Although I do like to think that we have at least 2 others dead because Gaius did have their mask on his belt, but like I personally like to think that at least 2 others are dead based on the 2 masks that we saw hanging off Gaius' belt. I mean, he's a smart guy, so it wouldn't surprise me if he figured out how to kill the Ascians out on his own, as well as the confusing events that are surrounding Mitron and Emeroth. Yeah, I think it's still a bit too early to rule out any others for the time being, though. So for now, I would say that out of the 14, we have 3 dead, 4 who are currently out of action for the nearby future until we learn otherwise, and we have 7 others who are still alive and kicking. Anyway, I hope that you all liked my video and are looking forward to learning more about the Ascians. I know that I really want to know what their whole deal is and what exactly their goals are and why they're doing it, but yeah, I mean, if you have any other suggestions for theories or a future video, please drop a review down below, and I'll be looking forward to seeing you all kicking some serious Ascian butt in Shadowbringers. Bye!